read your policy. Again, I love reading policies, but you have to go past the first couple of pages because insurance policies we give you everything up front. And then the second couple of pages, we take it all away. So then don't call your broker and be like, you told me I had all this coverage and I'm reading it and everything's excluded. Make sure you read your policy thoroughly. Go all the way because there are sublimits and endorsements in the back that give back that coverage.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Tim. Welcome to the Aviation Business Podcast. We are so glad that you're here today on our podcast episode. If you're listening on Spotify or YouTube or iTunes, whatever, or if you're here with us live today, we welcome you to the show. This show is sponsored by Rudder Marketing. Rudder Marketing is a digital marketing agency for flight schools. We are focused on the aviation industry. We help flight schools across the country and internationally grow and scale their aviation business through digital marketing. If you are looking to grow your school, give us a call, 804-1200. Or if you would like to be a featured guest on the podcast, go ahead and give us a call as well. I'd love to have you on our show. Today we have a very special guest. I'm super excited to have her on. I was introduced to her from a mutual friend and contact. Like usual, I always let the guests kind of introduce themselves. So we can bring on Beth to the show. How are you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Doing wonderful. Awesome. I was about to give you a whole intro and everything, but I'll kind of let you take the floor here and give us a small, brief introduction on who you are, what you do, and it's here for Beth.
Absolutely. Yep. No, I'm Beth Clark, and I am an aviation insurance specialist with Marsh McLennan Agency, and I help aviation clients, especially flight schools, evaluate their insurance coverages with aviation markets and structure them around their operations.
Cool. We're talking about insurance today, guys. So if you guys we're in for a treat. I know with rising prices, whether it's fuel, and other things, insurance is always a consideration for a flight school. When you're thinking about your margins, your top line, and your bottom line. So insurance is always a point of conversation. So we have Beth from Marsh McLennan Agency, MMA. It's quite a big kind of company. Can you give us a little briefer on, the insurance carrier as a whole and what you guys do?
Absolutely. So we are we are agency. So essentially what we do is we broker between insurance companies, or the carriers as we call them, and the clients. So we are licensed to be able to do that. We are property and casualty licensed to do that. So essentially Marsh McLennan, we're the 5th largest, and we have many contracts with aviation carriers, specific aviation carriers that only do those types of products. And we're able to provide many types of options that are tailored to our clients. Some carriers are better than others for our particular type of business. I actually do more than just flight schools. I also handle manufacturing, drones, ag spraying, owner pilots, professional pilots, charter operations, and essentially, I even have done missiles before. So anything that goes off of the ground, I can handle it. And depending on what type of exposure we have, that we go to a separate market for that.
Okay. It's a lot. So I think MMA goes on different industries, like you mentioned, but then you particularly work a lot with aviation. So what what inspired you, I guess, to kind of move to the aviation industry and focus on this specific sector of the market?
Yep. So I've actually been doing insurance almost 19 years now. So I'm aging myself there, but mostly business insurance. And what was amazing is my background. My grandfather was in the Air Force. So I have always been interested in aircrafts. And then when he retired with the Air Force, he went to Thiokol and worked on space shuttles. So I grew up in Utah, And when I was 14 years old, I got my private license. Well, not my private license. I got a student pilot's license and flew hot air balloons in Park City. So
Oh,
I know. So then I actually got to fly in the largest hot air balloon festival in Europe in Lorraine. And I know, but I have not flown a hot air balloon since. So that's always the next question. Like, oh, do you keep flying? No, no. But started that when I was 14. So I always had an interest in aviation, but handled business insurance until probably about 8 years ago when I worked on an FBO and a charter operation and recognized that the insurance policies, insurance forms are so much different than business insurance. And I am probably what you call an insurance nerd. I like to read forms. I like to read policies. So to me, they're a puzzle.
yeah.
And when I was working on the business insurance side, I came in contact with my mentor, who is my mentor now, and he encouraged me and then believed in me and said, "You would be amazing." So, really would love for you to join the specialty side of the aviation. So, that's how it all started.
Oh, okay. Um, you kind of mentioned a couple of things there. So you were doing business insurance, and then you also kind of then leveled up, I guess, into aviation insurance. I guess kind of walk us through some of the basics. So I'm gonna play like the dumb guy here.
Mhm.
Um, Well, there's obviously special stuff you need for aviation in particular, like, let's say, hull insurance or something like that. But then there's also like just all businesses and small businesses in general may or may not need insurance too. And that's just general business insurance. So, um, what type of, I guess if I was starting a flight school tomorrow, walk me through the different types of insurance, programs that might require to operate.
Absolutely. So, when looking at a flight school, we're looking at what type of aircrafts are, first of all, what type of aircrafts, what kind of training are you looking to do? Are you looking to do just, piston? Are you looking to do turbine? Are you looking multi engine jet?
Mhm.
So, that is the first step, and that will let me know in which direction we need to go. Also, flight schools need general liability. You're going to have people walking on your premises. You've got students everywhere, and your general liability policy is going to cover your premise. Also, some general liability policies include the professional liability for your CFIs. A lot of other aircraft policies, again, this is the fun part about aviation. There's different insurance carriers have different forms. So some insurance carriers have that protection for their CFIs on the fleet policy, and some have it on the general liability side. So once you have that, then are you going to be hiring or are you going to be 1099? So then we need to look at workers' compensation. Uh, so that generally that's how we first start with talking to what beginning flight school owners are going to start with.
Got it. There was, I guess, there was one thing that you said that can go either way. So I think it was for the professional CFI insurance. They sometimes put it under the general liability of the business, or they put it under like the fleet policy. So is there pros and cons to either mechanism? I'm sure flight schools across the country do it in different ways. So I'm kind of curious to hear your take. Is it better to run the professional CFI liability insurance through the fleet, or is it better through the general liability of the company?
It truly is, there's no better, there's no worse. Again, when reviewing different insurance carriers, so when we go to the markets and we get quotes from different insurance carriers, we just want to make sure that our client has the full package for their operations that makes sense for them. So whether or not it's included on the fleet policy, we just need to make sure the wording makes sense. And again, just if it's on the fleet policy, the wording is different. And if it's on the general liability side, it's more looked at as a products policy of an errors and admissions, which is why they put it under a general liability. So in the end, that's the same student negligent instructor uh, endorsement. It just could be on either policy.
Got it. I guess the biggest thing that most flight school owners are probably thinking, when it comes to insurance is price. So what factors, as you run a flight school, some that some are 141, some are 61, some have 10 airplanes, or some have helicopters. Some have multi-engines, some maybe just have one T hangar and maybe a plane and another one on tie down, right?
Mhm.
There's a big depth of variation for flight schools. What are the factors that an insurance company looks at when pricing a policy for aviation business flight school?
Great question. So, if the flight school is Part 141, there's obviously a lot more structure because they're regulated by the FAA a lot heavier than a
Hmm.
Part 61. So, underwriters may look at a Part 141 and it might be more attractive to them because of that structure. There's not so much chaos going on. And they may be able to put up higher liability limits for that Part 141 than they might be able to do for Part 61. They also might be able to price it out accordingly. If it's got a great loss history, that's also going to be key. What types of aircrafts is going to be key. Do they have older aged aircrafts in that flight school? Those are what underwriters are going to be reviewing, and that's how they're going to determine pricing.
I see. So if you're running a school, let's say you're investing and you're starting a new school up, and then you're getting a new flight or new fleet of, let's say, Piper pilots, or whatever they're called, or Technums, versus, let's
Hmm.
say, you're running a fleet of 1960, I don't know, Cessna 172s.
Yep.
um the insurance is, I would say, it would probably be higher with the newer planes, because I mean they're higher hull. I mean, it's worth more, I guess, if the hull value is higher compared to, let's say, a slam and go 172 that's been beat up, and it's like or maybe I'm mistaken, I don't know, I'm just kind of making assumptions here.
No, absolutely. And a lot of people do. They make that assumption saying, I'm going to get an older airplane because the newer one is going to cost me more money. Well, yes, the newer plane may, because obviously that whole value, which is the value of that aircraft, is going to be more than a 1974 172. But rate wise, which is what you should really look at when you have an insurance policy, is what your rates look like. And the rate on your whole is probably going to be higher on that older aged aircraft because parts are not as available as they are on a newer airplane. And availability of parts definitely comes into a claim situation because then you've got an aircraft that's down for 6 months because you can't find the part. Now you have loss of use. You're not you don't have an airplane that you can you're billing out for. So not necessarily is a older age aircraft going to be saving you money. It may be even costing you more money.
So let's just say the worst happens. Let's say, I don't know, someone was taxing Sierra Bravo over there, and it hit a sign, the
Hmm.
nose gear collapsed or something. I don't know. You're looking for a part, but you can't source the part. Now, so the plane is down. The flight school makes a claim, because it's down for, let's say, 3 to 6 months. The loss of use, does insurance fund that, or is that it's based on their policy, right?
100%. It is based on your policy language, whether or not you have that endorsement, that form in there. Again, it's so important. You mentioned before that flight school owners, they look at their premiums. They look at that bottom line and say, "Wow, that's
Right.
cost me a lot of money." But you get what you pay for. I hate to use that term, but it's so true. You need to understand exactly what you have, what the coverages that you do have, and making those assumptions can be devastating to some business owners. So it does matter what is listed in your policy if it does have loss of use endorsement. It may or may not.
I see. Let's take this scenario and kind of break it down a little bit more further. So, um, an accident or incident happens. I don't. Those are special keywords. You gotta be careful with the words there. Something happens at a school or at an aviation business. Let's just say hangar rash. There's someone was taxing, or not taxing. Someone was trying to push back the plane into the hangar. They didn't really guide it right. Maybe aileron got bent up. Okay, now we have an accident, and let's say it was a renter that was pushing it into the hangar. Let's put that scenario. So what's the kind of cascading effect of, like, from that happening? What actions do the school have to take? I guess, what parties are affected, and then who comes out paying what?
Yep. No, so again, loss of use is it's not common on school rental policies just because it's very common that a student is going to wreck the plane. So I just want to make that clear. But say your student or your renter, your student has a policy where they have a non-owned policy
And
and
what policy? I'm sorry.
a non-owned
A
a
non-owned policy.
non-owned
Okay.
renter's policy. Yep.
Yeah.
So if that student has a non-owned renter's policy, and again, it's insurance. So if that student is flying solo, or to your example, the student is taxiing or pushing in and it has hangar rash and they have a non-owned policy. That non-owned policy may be liability only. It may have physical damage. And that non-owned policy may or may not, again, depending on the situation, depending on the owner of that aircraft, pay for that, either the deductible or the physical damage for the hangar rash that that student just caused. Now, I'm going to give you a different example because non-owned policies, some flight schools require, hey, you're a student, we want you to carry a non-owned liability policy, and we want you to have physical damage enough to cover our deductible. So easy, $5,000. Let's use $5,000. So if that student and a CFI are in the plane and something happens, there's an incident that occurs and there's property damage to the aircraft. Now, because the CFI was in that airplane, it may and may not null and void that non-owned student policy. So,
Wait, repeat that. I'm sorry. I got lost there. So
no, you're
you got me
absolutely
in
fine.
a deep thread there. So okay, wait.
I did.
The student and the CFI are together. The student has non-owned insurance, but that's basically. I thought that non-owned insurance would pay for the deductible. That's right. No, okay, maybe I'm wrong.
No. So, say a student is flying solo,
Okay.
and this is easier. Say a student is flying solo and they do damage to that plane,
Mhm.
then more than likely there's going to be a sorry about that. There's more than likely the insurance carrier is going to pay on that claim because it is 100% negligence on that student. But on a school policy, they the school is, employing a CFI to fly with a student and to provide that instruction. So if that student has a non-owned policy, but yet flying with a CFI, that non-owned insurance carrier could point the finger at the school and say, "No, your CFI was in the plane. He's responsible for any damages, so that is on the flight school's policy."
Okay, this is my one question here now too. So like when insurance companies or carriers are determining who's liable, does who's acting as PIC have any factor into that, or is it different?
For a flight school, I mean, you want the student more than likely it's going to be PIC. They're going to be building their hours, but
Mhm.
because of the flight school and that structure of the flight school, and they are employing a CFI to provide that instruction, the insurance policy, again, read your forms, ask your broker, what do my forms say? It could mean that that CFI is responsible for any kind of damage to that aircraft if anything were to happen, if an incident were to happen, regardless if the student wouldn't let go of the yoke or, wasn't listening to the CFI, regardless of that, it still could be on the flight school owner's policy.
Right, because the CFI was in there. That's now there's another thing you mentioned, like W-2 versus 1099. So if this guy was a 1099, and then is it still on the flight school? I mean, I don't know. Now we're going in the weeds. We're getting deep into the situation there. But
No.
I do want to take a quick pause here. So from
Mhm.
our sponsors, no, I'm just playing. Not yet. One day. By the way, if you are listening to this and want to sponsor us and give us some money, please give us a call. Okay. I want to pause here because I didn't introduce in the beginning. There is a feature. So if you are listening to us, if you are in the room here live with us, there is a feature. There's a chat box somewhere over to the right. You can ask questions. We did have one of the viewers ask a question. He's actually, I think I know who this is. Or if you're on YouTube, you can do it on the chat as well. I think it shows up on YouTube too. There is a question from Adam. So there's a lot of confusion about having their fleet insured and the need for students to carry non-owned insurance. Why does a student need to carry their own policy?
So that is a business decision. I've got flight schools that do require students to have non-owned coverage. I've also got flight
Yeah.
schools that do not. I will say that there are flight schools that I have heard of based off of my relationships with underwriters. There's some flight schools that don't carry whole coverage, meaning they don't cover the aircraft. They are liability only. And they require that their students have non-owned coverage and enough physical damage coverage on their policy to cover any damage to that aircraft. So to answer his question, it truly is a business decision whether the flight school wants to require that coverage for their students or whether they don't. It or again, if the flight school is just a liability only, then you would want your student to have that non-owned policy to cover the physical damage of that aircraft.
Going back on non-owed policy, non-owed renters policy, it's a renter's insurance basically, right?
Mhm.
Um, if the if the pilot is an actual student at the school versus, let's say, only a renter, or let's say number of hours of the student, or ratings and certifications, does that play a factor into that insurance policy and the rates that they're getting?
So if they're a student of the school, and
Yes.
uh, the rates that they're getting on the non-owned. No, non-owns are generally fairly inexpensive. You can actually get a non-owned policy for 30 days if you wanted to, if you just needed to finish up and get your instrument rating and you're going to do it in 2 weeks or get your commercial rating. So different types of renters, non-owned policies that you can purchase, but whether or not you're a student of a school, it will ask if you are part of a school and that underwriter has flagged the school that doesn't carry their own whole coverage, then your coverage could be limited. You may not be able to get non-owned coverage if you are going to that specific school.
I see. So it's kind of separate from. I mean, I guess non-owned is really on the pilot or the student really to get on their own, and some schools may or may not require it. That's their business decision, but it's really that those two are kind of separate from each other.
Correct.
Um, yeah, that was a mouthful. So let's keep going in here. Um, a lot of, a lot of schools are growing. I think the industry as a whole is starting to, get back up there. We're seeing some interest in flight training, especially actually, flight training especially, but also maintenance is coming up too. We need a lot of new A&Ps and mechanics. But yeah, the aviation industry I think is starting to come back from, post COVID, the lull from that. And especially if they work with right rudder marketing, by the way. So if they work with right rudder marketing, then we're seeing them grow, right? As they expand their business, as they, maybe obtain more aircraft or more locations or anything like that, what happens to their coverage? Do they need to update their policy? Is there anything they need to do on the insurance side of things as they grow their school?
Absolutely. And a great question because we see this all the time. I highly encourage if you are looking to expand, if you're looking to go to another state and you're going to start a flight school operations there, definitely call your broker and talk to them or your producer and talk to them and say, "Hey, what do I need to do? What happens to my policy? Is there going to be additional premium because I want to move into a different state? Are there separate endorsements which are added into the policy midterm?" Uh, Aircrafts. You mentioned rotor wing earlier. A lot of carriers do not appreciate rotor wings within flight schools. There are specific carriers that will, but if you, as a flight school owner, say, you know what, I'm going to start doing rotor wing and go out and buy a helicopter, your insurance carrier may say, no, we cannot cover that. You need to go to a different carrier, and that's a problem. Then you don't want to do that midterm. So call your broker before making any decisions with, and certain aircrafts too. You mentioned the Pipers, you mentioned Technams. There's other aircrafts out there where some underwriters said, yes, flight schools do use them, but we have had issues with them in the past. They've had a lot of
Hmm.
losses, and we will not write them. So now you're stuck again. You've just
Can you share
purchased
some
this.
examples? Just kind of curious, like what aircraft models do flight schools need to avoid?
uh, I don't really want to because I've got a couple of them that actually have those types of aircrafts, but and we're able to find them insurance, and again, there are so many carriers. Again, it's just so important to go to an agency that has an aviation vertical or an aviation specialist in it, so that they know those carriers.
Hmm.
Going sometimes to your local agent. Again, local is not bad. It doesn't mean that they're dangerous. It just means that they're generalist and they don't have all the access to all the aviation markets out there. So again, talking to your broker, make sure that, hey, I'm looking at buying this aircraft. Is that going to be a problem? Do the current CFIs that I have, are they required per the insurance carrier to fly them, or are they going to have to go through additional trainings? So all those things, when everybody's, there's a pilot shortage. We recently, as you're probably aware, had a flight school that just closed its doors. And students, yeah. And students are like,
I laugh because I'm in St. Louis with you. I mean, I
I
know the
know
story, so I'm not
it's
going to tell the names here, but yeah,
no,
look up St. Louis Flight School closure.
yeah,
Google.
it's been a big deal. And a lot of flight schools, I mean, I've got flight schools in Minnesota and I've got flight schools all over the country. And those CFIs are offering, to help those students that are still trying to build those hours, and saying that they will do it for free. But anyway, off the court, like off the
Yeah.
cuss. Yes, please contact your broker, because again, if you are growing, or if you have you want to grow, make sure that your insurance policy is going to be able to grow with you, and that you're not going to have to buy a separate insurance policy because of the aircrafts that you are buying or the location that you want to go to.
So it is scalable. So one of the things that I think you just kind of hinted on is like if you get multiple different aircraft, like I'll say types, models, if you get different aircraft models, um, it could require different policies for each one. But if you have the same aircraft model and you scale that up, first off, your maintenance is cheaper, usually because you get same parts usually. But second off, your insurance plan for the most part is not going to change. It's like it's pretty, or it might as you scale it up, it might get cheaper, I guess. But for the most part, there's no external factors that are causing it to be variable. Where like, hey, this is a new type of aircraft. You got to do underwriting on it, and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
That's correct, right?
That is
Um,
correct.
you kind of brought up a little briefly, and it's also one of the questions here. So, one of the other types of insurance policies that are out there are targeted towards CFIs. So, Adam in the chat over there asked, should or why would a CFI need to carry insurance? So we have the school having, the general liability, business liability. And they also have a fleet policy. Then you have the renters getting their own non-owed policy, and
Yep.
then there's the CFIs with the instructors. Now they also may or may not need insurance too, I guess.
Yeah, depending on how they are operating. If they are operating under the capacity of a flight school, then majority of the time they are covered under that flight school. And I'm going to use those words because not every situation is going to be the same. So, but most of the time, that CFI, if it's operating underneath the flight school, and that, again, it doesn't matter if they're W-2 or 1099, if they are working under that flight school name, then they should generally have coverage. Now, say a CFI is going off on his own and doing training in a student's aircraft. The aircraft is not owned by that flight school, it is owned by that student. Then it is important for a CFI to have his own non-owned professional policy. And that professional standpoint is more, products liability policy. And those are available as well.
Okay, let me just repeat that. If the I don't know if you watch those TikTok videos. It's like these guys that are on a podcast, like if, and there's like this random situation, they make a joke out of it. I'm
Yeah.
not that good at it. I'm not that good. Yeah. Okay. So if the CFI is instructing in the flight school's fleet,
Mhm.
they don't necessarily need to have their own professional CFI coverage. But if they are doing stuff on their own independently outside the school, or you have a student that has their own plane that's not owned by the school, then they need their own policy.
Correct. Or Or if the CFI is operating underneath the school in the course and scope of the schools under their
Mhm.
handbook, they're all following all the school's rules and going through, getting paid by the school, but they're in a student's policy, then the flight school's policy hopefully would have a non-owned policy associated with it. So essentially what would happen is the flight school's non-owned policy would pick up after that CFI if there were to be an incident. But if that CFI says, hey, I can charge you X amount and I can do it in your aircraft, then that is important for that CFI to make sure that he's got the proper coverages because he's no longer going to be covered underneath that school policy.
I see. Okay. Clear as mud, right, guys? Okay. Well, let's move on. So, there's a lot of different covers there. I think we talked about the school as it scales up, different types of aircraft, CFI coverage as well. I think that kind of covers most insurance for an aviation business, or is there something I missed as far as different policies to get and to obtain if you're operating a school? You have your general liability for the business, that's your premise. You also mentioned like workman's comp as well.
Hmm.
So that's just general business as a whole over here. And
Yep.
then you have the school, you have your non-owned insurance, you have your hull value or hull insurance fleet policy.
Hmm.
And then you may or may not need the CFI professional insurance depending on the scope of your school and what they're doing.
Well, you want it under the school's policy for sure, but if you are a CFI on your own, then you would want your own
Oh,
policy.
okay, okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Um, so if most schools already have some type of infrastructure for insurance in place when they're starting. They
Hmm.
usually get somebody. You mentioned, people met go local. Maybe they work with a local agency or company, and they've been operating for a few years now. They've been profitable, but now they listen to this podcast like, hey, wait, maybe there's some money to be saved somewhere, or maybe I'm not covered in a certain area. What should they do to kind of adjust and pivot and like upgrade their policy, or change it? Where do they start with it? What's the next steps for a person that, or a business that has been in business for a bit but is looking to maybe, they're not sure that if their coverage is like correct.
Absolutely. No, and again, nothing wrong with local agencies or, you know, uh, the only issue that I've seen in the past is that they're just generalists. They don't have all the contracts with all the aviation carriers out there. And what we like to do is to be able to provide options. Not every flight school is the same. Not all of them operate the same way. Different aircrafts, different CFI requirements. So with local, they may not have all the access to the markets. Right now, off the top of my head, I can access 14 different markets that would be able to quote a flight school. Again, if you got rotor wing, there that number is much lower. If it just depends on the situation. But
Yeah,
I would.
you cover rotoring. Does your MMA and you particularly, do you guys cover helicopters?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. We
So
do.
we do have some flight schools that are helicopter schools.
Mhm.
So reach out to Beth if you're looking for insurance. There you go. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Absolutely.
interrupt. I'm like, hold on, you brought the rotor thing, and I'm like, hold on, and let's bring that up again. So it's a harder, it's way more niche than like flight schools. So flight schools are already pretty niche as it is.
Mhm.
Um, and then yeah, the helicopters, and I guess if you even get to the balloon stuff that you mentioned earlier, like that's like really like you can't, you're gonna find, you have to find, there's like one person in like the one state or something like that. I don't know.
There's maybe two.
Um,
Maybe.
so,
I'm
my
kidding.
bad, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry. So you're
No.
looking for a new policy, you're looking to upgrade, and you're talking about the school and like I guess it kind of depends on the school as well. So
Yeah. So what I
you,
would recommend with your local broker before you what we call break up with them is go and ask them, "Hey, what markets do you have access to? Um, you know, what options do I have? What coverages do I actually have? Do I have the coverages that I need?" And if that broker can answer those questions and you feel confident about it, and they can say, yeah, I've got access to many markets, I can market your account and let's see what, the best terms and conditions that we can get for your operations. So, but if they come back and they say, well, I can go to 3 or 4, then that might be an opportunity for you to say, you know what, I just want to check and make sure that I've got the best coverage that's covering my operations for the most competitive premium that I'm paying.
What are some of the things, like, I know you mentioned 141 versus 61 potentially, maybe, or we mentioned
Mhm.
fleet size in the past, or just earlier in this conversation. But what questions should the flight school owner really ask their broker in order to reduce their monthly premium or annual premium?
So one thing, if they are looking for reduction, obviously deductibles is the easiest one. You know, I'll take on more risk because I have faith that I have structure in my flight school and I have faith in my CFIs. And we haven't had an incident in 5 years. What would it look like if I increased my deductibles, if I took on more of the risk? That would obviously decrease premium, but you're taking on more risk as well. The other thing that was really big deal, carriers are not fond of third party rental. And when I say third party rental, if a flight school has an aircraft, but they don't have as many students on staff or not on staff or enrolled, and they just have aircraft sitting, then they can open up and say, well, I'll just make more money by renting to third parties. That's going to generate more premium because the underwriter, you're essentially opening up and creating a bigger exposure because you have less control. So if you're a flight school and you have third party rentals, you may want to have that conversation with your broker and say, hey, if I were to remove that exposure, will it help my premium? Will it reduce my rates? Because that's where we see a lot of flight schools have a lot of claims is these, people who want to rent the aircraft over the weekend that the school doesn't have their CFI in that front seat, and there's more exposure to that. There's more losses.
So I guess the general trend is, though, if you are renting to a third party, which is Joe Blow that goes in this flight school, hey, is like, okay, you got Cessna 172, can I take it to Iowa over the weekend? Okay, that's one thing. Um,
Right.
I guess there's a certain point where, let's say I'm working on my insurance rating. Let's say it's, and then so I'm technically a student. Now, maybe I only take a lesson once a month, maybe maybe once every 3 months. I don't know. I already have my private, so I'm like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
But then, like, I might say, oh, well, can I rent the plane and do a cross country to California or something like that, or to, like, wherever. Um, at what point does that person go from student to, like, oh, he's a third party renter?
So, if you were a student, the schools that I work with, they have guidelines. So if you're a student, but you haven't been there 3 months, 6 months, they may require you to have a check ride with that CFI. They may say, hey, well, before we're going to let you take it out for the weekend, we're going to make sure that you can adequately fly this plane. So it's a business decision on that school's part. Some schools do, some schools don't. Highly recommend that they do because then they have more confidence that that student pilot that has not flown for quite some time can actually still fly that aircraft. But if you are just a Joe Blow, say, hey, I'm going on a golf trip with my buddies and I have my private's license, but I would need to rent a plane and I'm not a student, haven't been a student. Those are the exposures that underwriters they get a little iffy on because that's where a lot of claims do happen.
Yeah, and I see that. I get the insurance side of it too. This is my personal opinion, I guess,
Mhm.
but so, like, you have, the whole point of being a pilot is to go flying, right? And the problem is, a lot of times before people put the money in to buy a plane, they rely on the flight schools really to provide those aircraft to them to be able to exercise those privileges. So one of the
Mhm.
benefits of being a pilot is being able to, you get a plane, maybe get $100 hamburger, enjoy it. That's one of the reasons we do this. I mean, obviously there's a certain category of student that's trying to do the airline thing, and do that. Okay, go get your commercial, go build your hours and get out of here. But
Right.
then you also have the people that, maybe are business owners, or maybe they want to fly for fun. Maybe they're a little older. They get their private. So I think that we want to be able to rent these planes, but there's not really a good supply because all the flight schools are now saying no, we're not going to do it because the insurance is too high. So it's kind of like a compounding effect where we're kind of prohibiting the growth of, aviation because of insurance rates. I don't know. Maybe I'm off base there.
Well, no,
Um,
but to your point, so say you do third party, right? Because wherever you're located at, there are a lot of business owners and not necessarily a lot of students around, and you have these airplanes that you're already paying insurance on. If you have that conversation with the underwriter, you between your broker and say, hey, we will not rent this plane out until they go up with a CFI twice and they get a check ride twice. We will not sign off on it until we are comfortable. You need to make your underwriter feel more comfortable that you're just not, hey, again, going on a golf trip with the guys, can I rent the plane? Oh, sure, it's going to be this amount of money per hour, blah, 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 blah. So having that relationship with a producer broker that can have that conversation with your underwriter and say, hey, here's the deal. They have all this checklist that they go through before they let any third party rent. That is also having
so it's really
that
it's kind of
conversation.
negotiable. So as long as you're a
Yeah.
school, you make certain policies and you work with the broker, you can then kind of negotiate your rate depending on, hey, if is it really a third party renter or is it kind of a student because they came with they got training flights, they went with the CFI a few times, are we able to reduce the rate or are we able to like change our policy for XYZ? I think that's, possible. So I
No.
mean, I was thinking just in my head one day, like for example, like let's say I fly commercial to Las Vegas or something like that, and
Mhm.
then I rent a car. So the ability to go to another place and rent a car is we take it for granted, but the aviation industry doesn't have that yet. I think I've seen some ads. This is just me kind of going off there. I've seen some ads on Facebook where it's like, oh, this is a community of like you can rent a plane. There's a little map here, and then it shows like where aircraft is available, and then you can now somehow rent this plane somehow. But then it was like, no, not yet. Not really. It's kind of like you got to get checked out with insurance. You got to do the whole thing. So, I just envision the future one day when we have such a bigger supply of pilots and the insurance costs are a little lower or more understood, that we can just go wherever we want. And then, hey, because I don't want to, let's say, I don't want to fly my Cessna to Florida, for example. It's like a long flight.
Yeah.
I'd say I just, I fly commercial to Florida, and then I just want to, tour the state, go around. I
Yep.
want that option, but we don't have that option right now yet. I mean, unless you know people, and then you can kind of do something like that, I guess.
Well, and there are actually quite a few. I have a lot of them that actually do. They own their airplane, say it's a fractional ownership. There's a couple of guys, and they allow renters to rent their plane. That policy is called an instruction and rental aircraft, which then means it's just got a higher rate because the exposure is higher. But that policy will have built in, and I'm going to go deep in the weeds, so hopefully you can follow with me. That policy will have incorporated what the underwriter is already comfortable with, and it's called an open pilot warranty. And that open pilot warranty will say, okay, you can let random Joe fly your airplane, rent it for the weekend if he has 1,000 total time hours or 100 make and model, and he's been, had his check ride or VFR within the last 2 years. So those policies do exist. There are people that do instruction and rental, and you could rent an aircraft. You just have to fit in that box and with those times. So yes, that is available to you.
I guess this is more of a personal question for myself. So I'm finishing up my
Mhm.
commercial right now, and then I'm gonna get my CFI. We're also looking at potentially purchasing an aircraft. So like I'm looking at insurance too now. So for me, as a pilot myself, I would only just need insurance, I guess, on that one plane just for me as the pilot, and that's it. Like there's no
Mhm.
other person that's gonna fly. But what if I want to have it say, a friend fly it? Can I have my friend fly that plane? Is that covered in my insurance? So if I just say, hey, here's the keys, go for it. Yeah, I know I trust you. I flew with you before.
It,
Yeah, guys, you didn't know these things here. Like, oh no.
Oh,
I'm sure that happens all the time. I mean,
oh,
no, right?
all the time. Hey, he's flown a plane before. Oh, really? How long ago? 10 years. Okay. Yeah, no, we might have a problem with that one.
Yeah.
No. So absolutely. Again, you would purchase a policy, and that would be a what we call a pleasure and business policy. So use it for pleasure, maybe use it for business.
Uh-huh.
And you have a friend who is also, a pilot and wants to fly it. Read the terms in your policy, again, that open pilot warranty, and see if he fits, if his hours and his ratings fit within that policy definition of that open pilot warranty, then he can technically fly. Now, say he's off. Say it requires 1,000 hours and he's got 800 total time. Or say he doesn't have exactly the make and model time.
Hmm.
He's a couple hours off. Talk to your broker. Ask him, hey, what do I need for him to be able to fly my plane? And it's for the weekend or whatever the case may be. We ask, as Marsh McLennan, we ask for a pilot history form, which, name, address, we need, your pilot license number, your date of birth. Have you had any incidences? And then you have a section where you list your hours and your ratings.
Uh-huh.
And you send it off to the underwriter, and the underwriter said, he's close enough. I'm comfortable. So, like you mentioned before, it's negotiable. There are things that are negotiable, especially with pilots. And if he doesn't have that specific make and model, but something close to it, then the underwriter may say, okay, have him do 2 hours of dual, and then we'll allow him to fly solo. So those are options for sure.
Dual as in with a CFI, or just dual with me because that's my plane and I can fly with them.
Dual with a qualified, generally a CFI,
Qualified instructor. Okay.
qualified instructor.
Oh, that kind of brings up the next one. So let's say I finish up my CFI. I own a plane now. Can I instruct in that plane? What type of coverage do I need?
You would
Now we're going back to this. Do we need a general business liability for this? Is this a business now? I don't know. Technically, maybe. Do we need? I guess you said professional insurance is what you call it for CFIs.
Yep, there
So if I was an
is.
independent CFI, so I do have a decent amount of independent CFIs that have followed our channel over
Mhm.
the years. Um, Independent CFIs that are out there, right? So what type of, if you're just starting out as a CFI and you want to independently instruct, what are the steps you need to do in order to get your insurance handled?
So call your broker, your agent, and say, I need a professional liability CFI policy that is also covering non-own, and that will cover you on, negligent instruction. It will cover you if you purchase, again, if you want whole coverage on that for that aircraft, and that whole coverage can be covering the entire aircraft, or it can be just covering that deductible. And you've got your liability that covers any third party bodily injury or property damage that you may do. So call your broker. There's those policies out there, and that's what I would strongly recommend, especially if you're doing instruction in other aircrafts.
Got it. That was a mouthful. So let me look through the questions here. So we are kind of coming up on time. We went over flight school insurance. Kind of went over. We didn't go too much about, I guess, marketing trends and stuff like that. Let's see here. Let's go for this one. So there was a question in the chat. It says, have you heard of schools not requiring non-owned from their students, but charging them an annual fleet coverage fee? And also, if you're a viewer, if you have additional questions, we're wrapping up. So if you do have questions, go ahead and shoot them in the chat.
That is a business decision. I personally haven't seen that, but I could see a business owner wanting to do that just to cover, maybe they have a separate bucket for the deductibles that they are charging from the students to ensure that they have enough dollars in case that something were to happen. But no, I can absolutely see a fee being built in if they're not requiring that student to have that non-owned coverage.
I've seen it where they do an insurance surcharge. This is kind of weird. I don't know if the surcharge is the right word. So basically, if you do not have your own insurance policy as a non-owned renter, the school will charge like $10 to $15 an extra per hour on that flight. I've seen that for some schools. So then for most of the time, the school, because for example, if it's like a discovery flight, for example,
Mhm.
like that person may or may not come back, and so they just got paid a $15 extra. Now, if you are enrolled in there, then usually the school will then say, hey, you're enrolled now. You should get your own insurance policies. That way, you can save $15 an hour. Um, because typically these non-owned insurance policies are a couple $100s a year, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
I have one for myself,
Yeah.
and if I remember this right, it's like maybe 300. I think 200 to 300,
Two to
maybe
three
less. I don't know.
hundred. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, no, that's
I think that's
accurate.
what I'm paying right now for me is just, regular pilot, private instrument, running around, or go to different schools. But I do have my own like policy for myself, non-owned
Hmm.
runners, and it was like a few $100. So if you divide that by 15, how many hours you got to fly per year? I don't know. It's like I can't do math in my head. Like 20
Okay.
hours, maybe 10, 2. I don't know. I can't do
Yeah,
that.
I
My
don't do
wife's
math.
gonna hate me because she's like a human calculator and she can like calculate like really fast. And I'm like 300 divided by 15. What is that?
Oh,
Um,
my husband's
20,
the
I think.
same
Right.
way. Yeah. No, absolutely. So I could see that a flight school, instead of charging for or requiring a non-owned requiring a student to have a non-owned, then putting a fee on the other end of it. I will say that I actually have companies and that have contracts with carriers. So for those flight school owners that do require those non-owned coverages, we have the ability to basically give them a link that connects directly to them, to the carrier. That student fills out that information, puts in their credit card, purchases it, and that flight school would get a copy of that policy. And so will the student, and they don't even have to go through the broker. But the broker is involved on the back
On the
end.
back
But
end.
but
Yeah.
it makes it a lot easier, just saying, hey, here's all the things you got to fill out, and go to this link here. You purchase your non-owned policy through this company, and then you're covered and ready to go.
Yeah. Kimberly put in the comments 20 there. So yeah, 300. If your non-owned insurance policy is 300, why did we divide by 15? And then there's a $15 additional surcharge. You only need to fly 20 hours per year to justify buying the insurance outright. So there you go.
Thank you,
Um,
Kimberly.
we're gonna wrap up here, but one of the good questions that I think my team has provided us is if you can get every flight school owner listening right now to do one thing this week related to insurance, what would it be?
They are not going to like my answer. I'm going to tell you to read your policy. Read. I know. I love reading policies, but you have to go past the first couple of pages, because insurance policies we give you everything up front, and then the second couple of pages we take it all away. So then don't call your broker and be like, what you told me I had all this coverage, and I'm reading it and everything's excluded. Make sure you read your policy thoroughly. Go all the way, because there are sublimits and endorsements in the back that give back that coverage. But read your policy. If it doesn't make sense, or if you don't think that you have the coverage that you thought you did, never make that assumption. Call your broker, call your producer, your local agent, and say, hey, I really would like to review this with you and make sure that I am adequately covered, especially if you're going to be growing your business. Here's my idea. Am I going to be covered for that? And so, yep, read your policy.
You kind of brought this in here too. So people that are caught off guard, right? What 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 trends maybe do you see with schools that are able to handle claims better than others? Like what separates the one that can handle claim well from the other ones that are caught off guard? Or do you think that's just a matter of preparedness, just not reading the policy correctly, or do you think it's they didn't ask the right questions when they were negotiating with their broker? What are some of the things that a flight school can do that way they are not caught off guard?
Just don't look at the premium solely. Look at the policy limits, understand the limits, understand your coverages, so you're not caught off guard, so you're not making those assumptions. That is going to be the key thing for you not to be caught off guard. Also, another thing, I know we're wrapping up, making sure your aircrafts are insured for the current value that they are today. 172s are not the $50,000 that they were 5 years ago. They're actually a couple $100,000 now. So making sure your whole values are adequate for what you have, because that insurance carrier is going to go out and look for that and say, well, you only insured it for 35,000, but they're hired a lot. They're a lot higher now. So again, reading your policy, knowing what limits you have, will help you not get caught off guard and have a claim to where you're holding the bag instead of the insurance carrier.
It's like, I think it's like gold to people's ears. Like, oh, planes are an appreciating asset. They're not a liability. It's like, okay.
Exactly.
I don't know
Yeah.
about that, but all right. What is the best way for someone listening to this podcast, whether they're a flight school owner, a pilot, CFI, or anybody like that? What's the best way that they can get in touch with you or someone at Marsh McLennan Agency if
Mhm.
they want to have a real conversation about their coverage and their policies?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and my email has popped up a couple times. I'd be more than happy for them to, send me an email, say, hey, can I schedule a time with you to review my policy? I'm not quite sure if my broker, who I've had for the last 50 years, who is my father's broker, is, the proper person for me. Can you do that? And I'd be more than happy. Again, I'm an insurance nerd. I love reading policy forms, and I'm happy to have those conversations with business owners to make sure that they are where they're supposed to be and that they're structured accordingly.
Awesome. So yeah, so if you're a pilot out there, if you are a flight school owner or work at a flight school, maybe a CFI, or even just a renter and a student, if you're thinking about getting insurance or it might be required by your school to get insurance, um, you need to, reach out to Beth with Mark McKellen. I think we have even Kim putting out a little shout out from you. Because Beth has this, or I'm sorry, Kim has this quick, what do you call testimonial? I can attest to Beth being very responsive. So she's very responsive on insurance questions. Reach out to them. I think it's a big company, so they have many options that are available. I like how they can select from different carriers, different markets, depending on your fleet, depending on your operations, depending on your situation. I think that they have the option. So please reach out to them. We love having her on our show. If you are listening to this and you want to be on our show again, I'll do my call to action one more time before we end here. Reach out to us, redruddermarketing.com or 314-804-1200. We talk about aviation topics here, whether insurance, software, operations, fly-in, maybe experiences, stories. Want to have it on the show. I want to make a really fun production here. So give us a call. Hit us up, redruddermarketing.com. If you're a flight school and you want to grow and scale your business, we have a whole team, behind the scenes here. So even this podcast, there's a team running this thing. They're scripting, they're producing, they're making the video, they're publishing it out to the internet. We can do the exact similar things to you for your flight school, help market your flight school. We have what's called the flight school marketing system. We focus on your website as kind of the foundation. Then we do organic AI search, making sure you show up on top. That way you can be found. We couple that with paid ads, and then we look at that as your reputation as a whole. How is your brand authority? And then we also look at nurturing and are retargeting those prospects. That way you can get more enrollments, you can get more people in your school. So if you are interested in that, check out redruddermarketing.com. Again, this is Tim with the Aviation Business Podcast. Thank you for listening. We will see you in the next episode. See ya.
Thanks, Tim.